What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to take a look back at Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. In my opinion, quite possibly the greatest movie tie-in game I think we've ever gotten. Now, really historically, we've gotten some okay ones, okay? And this was definitely an era where your shot was a little bit better, and you would get gems like this, right? Not so often, but just often enough to keep you going through these things. This trend died, and then it kind of has come back, and it's come back largely and almost exclusively in a terrible way. Games like Jumanji, Fast and Furious, right? They've tried. I don't even want to say they did an okay attempt because they were terrible. But this game is so unbelievably good, and I remember getting this game way back in the day. I actually got it on Xbox. Now, if you recall, because I got the Game Boy version as well, but that's a thing, right? This game has multiple versions, and the Game Boy one, side-scroller, freaking rules. I have that as well. So unbelievably good. We can do a video and talk about that one day. But I want to talk, in this case, I went back and I played the PS2 version, which, PS2, Xbox. The Xbox version kind of historically has had better frame rate, slightly better visuals, but it doesn't truly, at least in my opinion, matter all that much. But that's the one, we're talking about in this video. So let's jump into this game a little bit. And just fun fact, and I might make another video just to continue this fact, like in a longer format, but this game first released in April 2nd of 2005, okay? April 2nd. The movie came out in May. We just celebrate, at least when I'm recording this, these videos go up a little bit later than when I record it, May 19th. So this game came out a month and a half, and this is this is a widely known thing, but I just want to touch on it just a second because you would never get away with something like this now, right? This game gives the key plot points to the movie. Now, it skips an unbelievable, kind of like the scene-to-scene transitions. Once they land on Coruscant, there is a lot of, just talking and a lot of setting up other things before Obi-Wan goes to Utapau to get General Grievous, okay? So in that time, they skip that, and they skip a lot of the sections even. Right after that, they do the Mace Windu thing, but they, Order 66 generally is completely ignored. They jump around, but you get so much of the movie spoiled. And I don't care. It's not like it matters right now, but back in the freaking day, for this to come out a month and a half before, you were getting, not just, by the way, the movie clips, which I always appreciate. Even doing it now, it's odd to see like the General Grievous things or, the ending of Obi-Wan, Anakin talking. Now, again, they're snipped, right? They're not nearly as long, and they don't give you the full context. In fact, I was trying to find a specific thing. They mentioned Padme once. Anakin mentions her when you're fighting him at the very end, when Obi-Wan and Anakin are doing their duel. I think it's when you play as Anakin. It's not even when you play as Obi-Wan, and he mentions that you turn Padme against me. That's the only time she's mentioned. You don't see her because they skip all the Coruscant stuff, and then you don't even see her on the ground in Mustafar when they're talking kind of in circles, right? They don't show that. So just things like that kind of stood out to me where it's like, man, huge moments skipped over. However, so many moments, Grievous, Count Dooku in the beginning, Mace Windu. I want to say the Attack of the Clones, not to, parrot the second movie, but, when the clones turn and you do Order 66, he goes to the Jedi Temple, like all of those moments are in here, and you even get the freaking movie to kind of like tie in. So unreal, and just something that I don't think you literally can't, because that would just spoil the entire thing. So that's one thing I just think is unreal. And then, of course, there's the game itself. Look, one thing I forgot, because it's like, all right, I'm going back to a game that's 20 years old. Okay, this game turned 20, as did the movie. And it's like, all right, well, what is going to hold up? Obviously the visuals are a little rough around the edges, but it honestly still looks pretty good. The lightsaber feel is actually incredible, and this was something that, I played this game to death as a kid. I would play over and over the main story, and then I would just do the verses, pitting people against each other and just kind of like learning the moveset. It's at the same time not as complicated and just as complicated as I remember it being, if that makes sense. Like, once you get into it, there's not that many combos, or when you're holding like the heavy attack or the light attack, to do some of like the slow-mo, kind of executions. those things, like, they repeat. Every character has definitely got their own unique, like, fighting style. Like, fighting as Grievous, fighting as Count Dooku, he is much slower, but just the movement is a little bit different. Darth Vader, right? All these characters, like, it is so freaking cool to play as all of them, and they feel different, but the move set, in terms of, like, okay, I'm going to do this button, then that button, those are generally the same outcomes. So in that way, it was less complicated, because, I mean, I remember as a kid being like, oh man, like, everybody's got their own unique, I mean, like, you have to study them for hours to figure out how to play as them. Not really. I mean, to be honest with you, you could pick up a character and kind of learn what makes them tick in like 2 minutes, right? But at the same time, there's actually, I think, more combos than I remember there being. Like, you can really chain together some really cool attacks, and just the overall feel. I mean, I remember when they land on Grievous's ship in the very beginning, like that. I mean, they stretch that, right? That's like 6 chapters or something in the game. They really make it count as much as possible. But just the moments of throwing your saber, right, or blocking. I mean, the sound in this game is so unbelievably good. It's not something I really kept in my memory, right? Like the sound. How does the sound make me feel? But you think of that when you think of like the Battlefront games, the newer Battlefront games. One of the things that EA nailed so well was making you feel like you were there because of the sound design. It was so unbelievably good. I mean, the acting in this game is actually extremely good, okay? And then when it comes to just the sound effects of slicing droids or the blaster fire or blocking or anything, like, it's very, very good. Dismemberment, right? Not only can you slice droids in freaking half, but this was before the age of, when they were going to kind of crack down on this stuff. You could dismember clones, and that happens quite often. Actually, I think any clone that you take out in this game, you are chopping at least one arm off, if not more. So, I mean, that's just an incredible feature, but it just feels good. When you would clash with the sabers, right? A little Battlefront-like, but different because of the different kind of saber-type format that they got going in this game. I mean, you could talk about the story and stuff, but I'm trying to, like, jump to every key feature. Like, again, I think they nailed about as much as, what you would want them to nail in the movie. I will say, I can appreciate not only because they changed some stuff, right? Some stuff is just flat out changed. How almost everybody dies is completely changed. Well, completely. I mean, they still die, right? So, like, Dooku, his death is changed. Now you just stab him. Grievous, his death is changed. You just stab him. They have a thing with stabbing. You can kill Obi-Wan, right? And that secret, not even really secret, it's just the final level of the game. You play the first 16 chapters. Chapter 17 unlocks, and you can play as Anakin. It's the exact same thing, only then you obviously kill Obi-Wan. A lot of stabbing, right? But I mean, Mace Windu, there's another one. Instead of chopping his hand off, you actually stab him in a really cool, dynamic way, and then kick him out the freaking window. I can, look, not all of those are actually better, and that's something, I think I would emphasize here. They're not necessarily better than the movie moments. I think Grievous's thing is pretty unique, right? Like using the blaster because you see the heart and all that jazz. Dooku, like, that's a whole sequence, right? Where it's like he's shocked that Palpatine is even telling Anakin to do it and all that jazz. So, you lose that stuff. You absolutely do. But I can appreciate them doing it in a slightly different way. And hey, in terms of the spoiler type thing, maybe that's their way of getting around it. Even back in the day, right? It's like, well, we're still going to show those things, but we're going to show them at, like, technically, like Anakin stabbing Mace Windu and kicking him out the window. He cut his hand off. I mean, I don't know what he expected to happen after that in the movie, but, Palpatine does the heavy lifting for that part, whereas Anakin does it in the game. So, again, I don't think, really those three, I don't really think any of them is better in the game than it was in the movie, but it was just a different, it made it a little bit more dynamic. I will say the boss fights are really cool. They're kind of, I think they're all not 3-stage, but they're 3 or 4-stage. Like, you'll just go and fight them in a couple different areas. Count Dooku in the beginning. Grievous is like all over. He leads you on a wild chase, right? Everybody, though. Of course, the thing to probably bring up as well, like, not only the changes, but what about where they added things? This is actually where I think the game should get a ton of which I think, historically it really has. So how about Anakin going to the Jedi Temple and killing Jocasta, right? The chief librarian. How about just adding in, not only is he slaughtering all these Jedi, which, is really fun. Like seeing Order 66 play out at the Jedi Temple when you're playing as Anakin, that's one thing, and it's really cool when you're facing the same like 3 to 4 Jedi types, in terms of like the character models. It takes away from it a little bit, but I'll give them a pass there. But how about Sarah and Sin? Like having those two, like that is really, really cool that they threw in like a little, okay, well, he's going to the temple. There's going to be kind of different like levels, right, of competition. You're going to face a master, so he's the master, and then she's the Padawan. And those fights are pretty cool. Again, he dies by a stab, but it was really cool, like force, him throwing the lightsaber. That was freaking awesome. And then her, I mean, she gets freaking knocked out by a pillar. Like those are again things that kind of just make it a little bit more, well-rounded, right? I guess in terms of additions too, how about the beginning? Like a couple rejected movie ideas, right? When Anakin and Obi-Wan are down like in the water level of Grievous's ship, or when everything flips upside down and Grievous is magnetized on the top, even the bodyguards are, and then they'll drop down. Like those were supposed to be scenes, in the actual, and some of them are deleted scenes, in the movie. So I really can appreciate, and you can look at like the concept art in this game as well. They took a lot of rejected ideas. I think there's like a flying stormtrooper or clone trooper, I guess, with the like wings, and that was actually a concept created for the movie, and they never did it, so they just put it in the game. So just things like that where you have to make a game, right? So you have to have these characters or these models, whatever, that, they're going to have to expand it a little. You can't face the same 2 battle droids and then like 1 clone type. You have to come up with basically those grappling ones or those assassins clones, which, they can get very annoying, right? Even though, again, like there is some complexity to the fighting, sometimes it's not so complex, right? Sometimes you got to get lucky. Sometimes it's grappling in terms of like grabbing the character that you have to do. It depends. And again, there's a little bit of complexity there that I can appreciate. A couple other things I do want to bring up though, this is something I remember doing and I have some strong thoughts even right now as a child, okay? So super into Star Wars, or really at this time, I was just really getting in. So like I was soaking freaking everything up. So the Vader Ben Kenobi thing is unreal, right? That they even have that in there. So that's something that's unlocked at the very end of the game. You can play them in verses. There's that bonus episode where you play as Vader and you take out Ben. And not only that, but it's literally the clips. So they did the same thing with episode 3, but they did it with episode 4. That is so unbelievably cool. They did that. There's even like moments in the actual gameplay where Ben will do the, turning the lightsaber off and letting you slice him in half. Like those things are just such cool small details, right? So there's that. But, I mentioned those bonus stages. I can appreciate them, but I also kind of hate them. And that is something that I would not say back in the day. So getting to play as Grievous's bodyguards is one of the coolest things I think ever created in a game. I mean, I'm a fan of like the android type thing. Grievous is my favorite Star Wars character. So playing as him in this game freaking rocks. You can have the 4 lightsabers, and it's like a time thing, and he's a beast. Like if he gets in your face, he's very hard to stop, and he just swings relentlessly. Okay, so he's cool, and he has a bonus mission, right? He's taking out all these freaking clones, and then he kills Obi-Wan. So that's a cool one. And it's, they're mini. They put you in an area, they give you wave after wave after wave of enemies, and you kind of survive them. But I will say the balance is pretty off. Like just how they play is like the Yoda one is heavily balanced towards him. So like he feels overpowered when you're jumping around, and he's cool. Yoda is very cool to play as in this game, but he's jumping around, slicing everyone. I do find the jump attack is literally the only attack you need in that mission. Cool to play as him. You can't play as him in verses, so that's really the only opportunity. So that's awesome. I think that's a really cool thing. However, then you have like the Grievous bodyguard thing. And I remember as a kid playing it and never being able to beat it. And I can confirm as a 28-year-old, I can still not beat it. Those bodyguards, while they are cool in their look, while they are cool in their move set, and by move set though, I mean one attack. They have 1 to 2 attacks. Actually, they have a light and a heavy. So they literally have 2. And then they have that duo move that if you're both standing next to each other, you can pull off a move. Those moves are cool to look at, but that level is about as broken as humanly possible. They move like they have cement strapped to them. I mean, I literally could not beat it, and I played it like 6 times. Now, as an adult, I remember playing as a kid and loving it because I was like, oh my god, I get to play as these characters that I think are just underappreciated, but I don't think I really took in like, oh, this is too hard. And I think now, yeah, it's just not balanced right, honestly. But again, I mean, like where we're at right now, 20 years later, I'm not docking points for things like that. Look, I think a lot of this game is made with an unbelievable amount of love, right? Not only, I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about a movie tie-in game, right? Just circling back to the beginning. These are things historically that get very little budget. They have very little talent sometimes. They're people like straight out of college, right, that are making it, and they're just people that aren't ready for it. And they're given like 9 months to work, right? Historically, and even now, like these are the games that come out now that are these movie, adaptations or whatever. That's the blueprint. They are people that are inexperienced, they don't have a budget, and they have no time. And they put these things together. This is from a studio that just freaking knew how to do it, right? They're taking concepts of the movie that were rejected, putting it in. They're expanding with new characters that become part of the entire thing. But, you're introducing things to make segments like the Jedi Temple attack feel longer. You're making fights, Grievous's fight, Dooku's fight, Mace Windu. You're making it a little bit longer and a little bit more dynamic. I mean, and then you're also telling the story of the movie. Like, you are doing everything that you could ask for. Then you do a versus mode, which, again, because the movesets aren't the most in-depth, this is not Street Fighter, this is not Tekken, right? But it's super cool to have this as part of the game, and I'm sure maybe many of you, I know, again, I did. I just played it over and over. It's got co-op, too, by the way, which I couldn't really experience now, but I did back then as well. You can play a couple missions with another person, or actually AI if you wanted to. But, all of those things are in the game. You got bonus missions. They're not great. They're a little bit one-sided, again, in terms of the balancing, but they're freaking awesome that they're even in this game. So the attention to detail really is a huge key, but then that love, and again, doing it right, telling that story, and then expanding and changing even at times, right? But doing it in just such a smart way. That is really how they made this game, I think, so special. And just to me, very few games can do this, like, period. I don't think there's that many good tie-ins like this. There are some. There are definitely some. Or adaptations. I think, honestly, SpongeBob, Battle for Bikini Bottom. Like, SpongeBob games, a lot of them are not very good. That game, and a couple others, is extremely good, right? But this, like, literally being a tie-in, that's even more rare because you're very much having to follow the source material. It just doesn't happen all that much that you nail it as much as they did. So, and I'm still very impressed because I still think this game has an amazing vibe, and it's still like just playing every single level. I remember myself playing it like 30 times, right? Like 20 years ago when I was just a young kid. I remember playing these levels over and over and over. And I don't even know why just to end this, I don't even know why my dad got it for me. I remember coming home from school one day, and he bought me like 5 Xbox games. Tack and the Power of Juju was one, and maybe we can do a video on that down the line. But like there was a couple, and this game was one of them. And I just nonstop I played this game. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon's turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.